Here's what's coming up on episode 38 of the Big Séance podcast. Claire Broad.
So this snake then was coming over my torso. Whitefeather then held the head of the snake up in front of me with the fangs protruding, and he ran a finger down the fang. Most circles are kind of a mixture between spiritual growth and then actually learning the mechanics of mediumship. You get plumbers who are brilliant at their jobs and plumbers that aren't so great, and singers that are fantastic and singers that aren't so great. Everybody's mostly coming from a good place, with good intentions, but they may not necessarily have just had the exposure to a great teacher. I'm very hot on evidence. I think when people come to see you for a reading, they really want to know that that person that they loved is there with you. You've got to bring that person to life. I think mediumship should be dealt with like a science, not just a spiritual journey. It is that, but it is also a science. We can work with it. We can put it to the test. That is why I follow this pathway, because I'm not religious. I can't just go on something in faith. With this, I've been able to, in my own personal life, touch it, feel it, work with it, put it to the test. And so I wouldn't ever expect anyone coming to me for a reading not to do the same thing.
Welcome to the Big Séance podcast. I'm Patrick Keller of BigSeance.com, and this is a place for an open discussion on all things paranormal, but specifically topics like ghosts and hauntings, paranormal research, spirit communication, psychics and mediums, and life after death. So basically, anything that pops up in my paranormal world. The candles are already lit, so you might as well come on in and join the Séance. Well, hello again. Have you lit your candles yet? Are you sitting comfortably with some freshly brewed tea? That was for you, Tech1313, who wrote a nice review for me on iTunes. More on that and some shout-outs a little later. But first, today you get to eavesdrop on a great conversation that I had with another lovely medium from the UK. It's part 2 of my Mediumship in the UK series. In the last episode, we talked to Marian Hover, who had some great stories, talked about modern spiritualism, and her continued work with the Ouija board with her development circles. In tonight's conversation with Claire, we talk quite a bit about experiences with spirit guides, and we again discuss the topic of the development circle. If you can't tell yet, I've been a bit fascinated with this concept lately. Before this summer, I don't think I had an accurate picture, really, of these circles, but I totally get it now. And now more than ever, I'm jealous that I'm not able to be a part of one of these groups, either with Marian or Claire. Something tells me I'm not done with this topic just yet, though. Claire Broad is a medium, spiritual development mentor, public speaker, and psychic intuitive. Her passion is to help others in a therapeutic manner. Claire runs a busy practice and is booked months in advance. She is a popular speaker and has demonstrated to sold-out theater audiences. Claire is regularly invited to organizations such as the ISM and local SNU churches, as well as groups such as AIM. She works closely with Lucis College, developing training and teaching, as well as providing private tuition. That's just a highlight from Claire's bio, and you can visit clairebroad.com if you want more information. So I want to introduce you today to Claire Broad. Hi, Claire.
Hi, Patrick.
I'm so excited. I've been talking to you for a while online and through email, so it's exciting to finally talk to you and hear your voice.
I thought exactly the same. I've been really anticipating. It's been exciting. Thank you so much.
No problem. You are very busy with a private practice as a medium. You do public demonstrations, public speaking, and teaching. You have workshops and classes. You speak at spiritualist churches all over. And you have a background in advertising, entertainment, and even massage therapy. And most importantly, maybe, I love that your website states that you're down to earth and normal, living everyday life as a full-time mom. So that's really your main gig, huh?
It is. That's the thing that I've dedicated my life to, apart from my passion with mediumship. Yeah, my kids keep me busy. They're the most rewarding thing, I think, so far in life.
Yes, life keeps changing, doesn't it?
It does.
Claire is from Hampshire in England. And what's interesting is that one of our last guests, Marion Hover, is not far from Claire in England. They've never met, but they have similar backgrounds and interests, and my path crossed with both of them at about the same time. So it's like this was meant to be, and I considered putting both of them on the same episode, but I guess I'll just consider this to be kind of a part 2 of the Spiritualism and Mediumship in the UK series.
I love it.
But seriously, there's a lot going on in this field of work in the UK, and I want to make sure everyone knows about it. You and I have laughed about the fact that we could talk for days about the topic of spirit communication, and so I'm open to hitting any topic that approaches us on our road today. You know, I definitely want to dig into the topic of development circles, your work with them, and what they look like. But first, if I'm not mistaken, you gave your first spirit communication at the age of 4, but you were seeing and communicating with spirit even before then. Tell us what that was like.
Okay, so that was really interesting. In fact, it's always my go-to. You know, I don't think there could be a medium on this planet who hasn't sometimes doubted, am I really any good at this? You know, if they're coming with it with the right intention, they are always wanting to do the best job. And my memory of me as a child being aware of spirit is the thing that really does, in a very cynical world, keep me on track, because those communications that happened when I was little, I didn't even think about them. I didn't logically analyze them. I didn't even question whether life went on. They happened, and particularly that communication when I was 4, which I remember really clearly, I kind of just accepted it. If anything, that one I was particularly irritated by. I'll have to tell you about that one. But from before that, I don't really remember too much before that, other than my mum telling me that often I would say that there was a man in my bedroom, and she would tell me that she couldn't see that man, and I would be able to explain where he was in the room, where he was sitting on my bed, sometimes strangely up near the curtains. I think my mum even then thought it was a bit strange. Of course, it could have been an imaginary friend, but I was going into a bit of detail. So she managed to ask the lady that lived in the house before me about this gentleman, and apparently that owner had died in the house before my parents bought the house. So that was interesting. That was never frightening. Like I said, I just accepted it. But when I was 4, this one I remember really, really clearly. I was in the cemetery, our favourite place, with my grandmother and my mum, because my granddad had died, and we had gone to the cemetery to look after his plot. And I can remember it now. They were tidying up around the area where had a tiny little headstone in the ground because he was cremated. So they were putting plants on it, tidying it up. And I was at a distance away near some taps where there were stones all around the taps, and people had left vases for other people to use. So I was crouched down playing at 4 years old with the stones, playing with the vase and playing with the water. And I can remember my granddad coming so close to me. And the interesting thing was, I knew it was him. I didn't see him. He just interjected into my mind and started impressing upon me, Claire, please can you tell Nanny, I remember him saying that to me, Ivy, I love you. And I was thinking, no, Granddad, I'm playing. I don't want to say that. I didn't even question it. No, that's just annoying. I'm quite happy here. I don't want to say that. And so the impression was getting stronger and stronger and stronger until in the end, I remember thinking, oh, for goodness sake, okay. But I didn't know who Ivy was. And so I just stood up and said to my grandmother, Nan, Granddad's here. He's saying, I love you, Ive. And my Nan and my mum just looked at each other. They were just like in shock because nobody called my Nan Ivy apart from my granddad. Everybody called her Connie. So I'd only ever heard her being referred to as Nanny or Connie. I'd never heard Ivy. That's how come I couldn't understand what it was. And so my Nan said to me from that day on that she just knew he was around because, for one, I was 4. And it was just not a normal thing, really, for a 4-year-old to come out with. We've still, and bless my Nan, she only died last November. She was 92, so she lived a great life. And she was still talking to me about it, even in those few days before she died. And so they're lovely memories. And she was one of my biggest confidants because she was able to see spirit, although she never did anything with it. But if ever I told her I've had this experience, she'd come bouncing back with one she'd had. So I know it's genetic. And so therefore, I think it just was very kind of accepted in my life growing up. My mum was obviously quite open to it because she'd heard some of the stories my nan had said. But I lived a really normal life as a childhood. I wasn't constantly being bombarded with communication or seeing unnerving things. And in fact, my dad was very scientific. So I had a really good balance between my mum being open and not dismissing the things that I would say occasionally, and my dad being the rational mind in the family. So I actually grew up very, in quotes, normal.
A good balance.
I had a good balance until I was a teenager, and then it all started kicking off. When they want to find you, when it's your time, they'll let you know. So when I was a teenager, that is when all sorts of things started going on around myself, but also within the family, because it was teenage is a funny time anyway, isn't it, with hormones racing and everything. Yeah, so I know that's a common time, especially in girls, but my parents got divorced at that time as well. And very strange things started going on around the house, things even my dad couldn't ignore. It's a bit funny, it's a bit strange, but there was a very pungent smell started to appear, which isn't the greatest thing to have, is it, following you around? My friends at school could smell it, and it was particularly in my bedroom, and it only came at certain times, which was strange. We couldn't put our finger on what the smell was. My mum turned the house upside down because she thought I'd left cookery somewhere in a bag from school sitting, because it was such a musty smell. And we just couldn't quite describe it. We wanted to say it was like curry, but it wasn't like a curry. And it was like musty, but it wasn't a musk smell. We just didn't understand what it was. And the thing about this smell was it would come and go. So smells linger, don't they? But this smell didn't. It would be there and then it would be gone. So that was the first thing that kind of alerted my parents to this is a bit strange because smells generally linger. And when you walk back into a room, you can smell them still, but they'd be gone. And then that smell started to follow me. So clairgustance, obviously, I later learned that the ability to be able to smell is one of the easiest things that the spirit world can do to get your attention, and that was clearly what was going on. So fortunately, and this is where there's no coincidences, at the time my mother had a job at the National Federation of Spiritual Healers, because we lived in a place called Sunbury and their offices were there, and it just so happened that she had a 9 till 2 job while we were in school doing an admin role within the offices there. And so she came into contact with a load of mediums and healers and started to tell them about what was going on. And the medium, particularly lovely medium there, who was amazing. We don't have mediums like this anymore. She was very old school, was able to say to my mum, I think this is what's going on here. And so we discovered, long story short, that I had a guide who was trying to get to know me and get me to know him. And that's how I discovered in the long term that I had a Native American, or that this spirit person, spirit being, spirit teacher, mentor, whatever word you want to use, was giving that perception anyway, giving me that image. And that the smell was apparently herbs that in Native American culture they would mash up and smoke, and he was bringing that smell forward so that I couldn't ignore it. So it's quite a nice story, because at the time when I was going through quite a lot of emotional stuff with my parents, he was letting me know, obviously, there's more to this life and you're not on your own. And now I have story after story after story. So I always say to my clients, don't just accept what I'm telling you on an hour with me, because I haven't. I've spent 20 years now documenting, keeping track of it, all these little experiences that happened to me. And the evidence is overwhelming now in my life, so that I can confidently do this work and know we don't understand it all. We don't have all the answers scientifically, and that definitely consciousness in some way can exist outside the body.
So it's interesting. I knew about your spirit guide, but I didn't expect that story to go there. So was the smell just like something that he used just to kind of get your attention, and is it not a presence anymore? Do you ever get the smell anymore, or is that a thing of the past?
That's a thing of the past. I had it for a few years, interestingly. I was, as a teenager, quite self-centered, believe it or not. And I thought he'd come to be with me. So I didn't think I had to do anything with it. And I went to see, interestingly enough, when I was in my first job, a lady there said to me, I'm going to see a medium. I don't know if you would like to come with me. I'm feeling really nervous. And I just thought, sure, I'll go along. That's fine. That'd be interesting. And she was the one who said to me, you have this guide. What are you going to do about it? And I did think at the time, that's an interesting question. Am I supposed to do something with this? I thought he was just here for me. When I acknowledged him, she said to me, come and sit in my group, my circle, and I will help you understand what's going on around you and to give you the benefit of my experience. And that was when I had the light bulb moment. I realized he's not just here for me. He's here because there's something I've got to learn and I need to do. And probably he's coming in for the benefit of others, not just myself. So that was a lesson.
Did you see down the road at that point kind of where you were going to go into your professional work today, or was that not until later?
I had no aspirations to be a working medium. At that point, when I was 21, my lovely teacher, Sheila Thomas, just said to me, you have an ability, why don't you just come and learn about it? And it was just from that reading. I hadn't even given it a thought. I was just really interested in, like teenagers are, in spirit communication. I was kind of really scared of it as well. I'd been having all sorts of strange experiences that none of us could understand or make sense of. It was curiosity that led me into her group. And I just honestly thought, I'm not a medium, but my mum had worked in the healing side of things, and I just thought, that might be quite nice just to learn about that kind of thing. I'm sure I won't be able to do it. But sure enough, with her guidance, it just started to flow. So, and actually even then, I gave and donated all my time for the first 10 years, training, learning as much as I could, and then doing readings for free and demonstrations for charity. I never actually thought I would ever do this as a job. It was something that was my interest, that fascinated me, and I was just seeing where it was going. So I had a very conventional career. I was quite career-minded in my 20s. I was climbing and doing, very well for myself. It didn't even enter my head that this would be something that I would eventually do professionally. So it wasn't until I was a mother and people started saying to me, "You're at home now with a baby. What about if I just came over? Could you do me a reading while they're asleep?" It started like that. So I would say the last 8 years, nearly 9 years now, is when things really kicked in. I've been doing it for years, but in the last 9 years, when people started coming to my home, I started out doing it for free. And then people would say to me, "You can't do it for free. You don't realize what I've taken from this. I need to pay you." They started leaving me money. I wasn't charging. And then before I knew it, I was kind of earning money. So then obviously I had to make it a profession. And it's just snowballed. It's just been a wonderful journey. It has snowballed to the point now where, like you say, I'm booked well into next year for one-to-one readings. I've done theatre work. I'm still doing the churches. I love doing philosophical teaching. I teach groups. I'm teaching in colleges. It's just really expanded out, and I'm really enjoying the journey. So I'm just rolling with it, seeing where it's taking me.
I just wanted to point out that your website says her aim is to provide evidence for the survival of consciousness after physical death, with the hope that in providing this insight, clients may gain an expanded awareness of life and the motivation to move through their grief and live more happily. I find it interesting talking to people who grew up around spiritualism. It sounds to me like, like the spiritualist church and with those ideas. And I don't know a lot of people that grew up with that background. So it's fascinating to me.
Sure. And the interesting thing is that because my family weren't aware of any of this, even my nan didn't talk about it unless I would say something had happened. Mm-hmm. My mum didn't know anything about it. My dad was completely scientific. It wasn't until I met Sheila Thomas and she invited me into her circle that I even started to even know there was a world out there where people believed in this kind of communication and that they used it for the benefit of others. So I guess when I think about it, it's been the last 20 years of being in it. I have grown up through it, which is rather nice, actually, because it gives you a little bit of a head start rather than suddenly questioning life in your 50s, say, even though that's young these days. And then starting there, I'm glad that I had that introduction at quite a young age. But I would say before 21, I didn't really have any understanding of the spiritualist movement or even spirit communication. I just knew it happened. It was something that just happened naturally beyond that point.
Well, you have shared an incredible personal story that happened recently. You shared that with me, where you received a healing from your spirit guide. Would you like to share that story with the listeners? I think they'd probably find that fascinating too.
Sure. Well, I shared that with you, and I'm happy to share it with the listeners because to me it was a unique experience. That just goes to show how long I've been around this movement, doesn't it? Because, providing evidence of survival, to clients who come along and have never had a reading before is pretty mind-blowing for them when they go away and have to contemplate bigger questions. To me, that's a given now. So when something unique happens, like that healing experience, I sit up and listen because it's nice when something like that happens, because it's kind of enthusiasm. It gives me enthusiasm again. I get excited about the fact that there is so much out there we're just not aware of. So, yeah, I had, unfortunately, over the Easter weekend, I contracted bronchitis and I was pretty poorly with it. I went down with a severe fever. And in the first 2 days, that was the thing that really kind of knocked me off my feet. And it was like flu, I guess, but it just seemed very, very intense. And to the point where I couldn't move, I couldn't get out of bed, everything hurt. And I was so hot, I couldn't actually control or bring the fever down. I'd been taking medication. I'd been doing, cold water baths and fans and anything you could think of to bring that fever down, and it just wasn't coming down. And because I was in so much pain in my body with it, I remember thinking on night number 2, I don't actually know how I'm going to get through the night with this, because I've done everything I can do, medically speaking, and nothing's working. So it was just fortunate, I think, that my husband came up to bed at that point. And so I voiced to him that I was really feeling awful and I didn't know how I was going to cope with it. And he was really understanding and kind of said, "You'll be okay," and went off to sleep. Or tried
I trust
to.
You'll be fine.
Yeah, you'll be fine. So, but the interesting thing that happened was then I thought, okay, so there's really nothing I can do. I'm just going to have to see if I can ride this out. I didn't think it was worth going to hospital for yet. Hadn't been long enough. So I then sent out a thought in my head. And as I was saying to you, with my heart, it was basically coming from the core of me. I don't know how I'm going to deal with this. I need some help. So all of a sudden, I don't think I wasn't even asking spirit. It was just a thought I'd had. All of a sudden, there was Whitefeather next to me. I couldn't see him, but his presence is so intimidating sometimes. It's so powerful, and you can't ignore him when he comes close. I just know it's him.
And I don't think we've mentioned that Whitefeather is the name of your spirit guide yet.
Sorry, yeah, sure. So Whitefeather is, well, that's what I call him.
Uh-huh.
There's probably a million Whitefeathers, but, that's what he was called to me by the medium when I first came across her, and she told me all about him and the names just stuck. But I just think that spirit guides, these higher beings, they project an image of themselves that will help you understand them and the teachings they're trying to bring. And I guess he doesn't care if he's called Whitefeather. He hasn't seemed to be too opposed to it, so that's what I call him, because you need a label, right? Mm-hmm. So he was standing next to me and he basically interjected into my mind, blended with my mind and it was involuntary. Now, usually when I work with Whitefeather or anyone in the spirit world, they never do that. They wait until I'm ready to work, and they respect my boundaries. And I've worked really hard to be very disciplined with my work. When I'm working, they're welcome. When I'm not working, they have to leave me alone so that I can be in everyday life. But this time, he just was there, present in my mind, and I could suddenly then see him in my mind's eye. But the interesting thing was, he was standing over me, and I was laying on the ground, and I was on a dusty floor. And I was very well aware of a circle or group of people around me, but I couldn't actually see them. I couldn't make out their faces. I knew they were there. And I was in kind of like a fetal position, laying on my side. And he said to me, "I'm going to put snake on you." And then I freaked because I hate snakes. And the trouble was, it was so clear in my mind, even though I was very present in the room, it was so clear that I couldn't ignore it. It was unfolding in front of me. So I then said to my husband, "Don't go to sleep. Whitefeather's here, and he's telling me he's going to put a snake on me, and I hate snakes." And at which point, because my lovely husband is very logical. He is very much science in his head. Darwinism, Richard Dawkins, Brian Cox. The two of us meet in the middle there and we debate things. So so I thought, I've got to tell him. I need to tell him this is going on. And he was like, okay, because he's kind of got used to me now. So I then started to tell him what was going on. And, I did think at the time, this just sounds absolutely crazy, but it was so clear. So this snake then was coming over my torso. Whitefeather then held the head of the snake up in front of me with the fangs protruding, and he ran a finger down the fang and to collect venom, which by that point I was really not feeling comfortable with all of this. It's not, the sort of thing that you feel relaxed in. When mediums give healing, it's all very lovely and relaxing. This was full on shamanism. And I had asked for it, hadn't I? I had asked for it. So anyway, there was rattling going on. At that moment, this rattling was going on and I could hear it. And I'm saying to Martin, my husband, there's rattling in this room. Can you hear the rattling? And he's saying, I can't hear anything. There's nothing in the room. And I'm saying, there is. I can hear this rattling. It was building in intensity, louder and louder and faster. And I knew somehow the people around me were saying something, but I couldn't make it out because all I could hear was this rattling. And it built up to a complete fever pitch. And I wanted out then. So I was opening my eyes now, looking around my bedroom, trying to make out things that I recognised and know. And there was a scene still playing out, even though I'm looking at my curtains, my bedding, my furniture. And suddenly the rattling stopped. Whitefeather disappeared, that image and that vision disappeared, and my fever broke, and that was it, gone. And not just my fever broke, but the aches and the pains and all the discomfort completely gone. And I was obviously telling my husband all of this because I didn't want him to think that through a fever I was hallucinating, because even I was asking myself that, so I was pretty sure I wasn't hallucinating because I was asking myself. It just seemed ironic, really, that it all happened like that. I was able to just then relax, go to sleep. I had an absolutely clear night's sleep, and from then on in, it was about recovery, which then took me another 3 weeks. But that intensity was all gone. And in the morning, I made sure that I spoke to Martin and said, listen, this wasn't a dream. I didn't hallucinate. The first thing I did was get online and check out, did Native Americans use snakes in healing? Because being in the UK, obviously, I don't have the privilege of being exposed to Native American cultures. Mm-hmm. And it came back that, yes, they used snakes, but they were feared as much as they were respected in the healing, and that they also used rattles. And these were used in times for even breaking fevers. So that was pretty awesome. I have to say, I came away thinking, wow, I really am being looked after. I asked for help. It came from my core. I was ready to accept that healing, and it happened for me. But that's just one of many stories. I need to write a book.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what's amazing to me is I know not all spirit guides are, Native American healers, but do you think that maybe a lot of us get those maybe healing moments from our spirit guides, and maybe we just, because we don't have the sensitivity that you have or the ability that you have, we just don't see it and don't know that it's happening like you went through?
I know that those in spirit are always present with us when we're in need of healing. It's not just spirit guides, although everyone, I am sure, has those in the spirit dimensions or non-physical dimensions. I'm not a big one for labels. I like to change the words. Mm-hmm. But that coming around them in their times of need, we just need to remember to ask. And the thing is, it isn't just a what I would think an egotistical ask. I'm not feeling too great, really need some energy. Can you come around me? Kind of asking. It's when you ask from your core, when you really are in need. And when I'm doing readings, often if there are health problems with people in this life, relatives of the person who's come for the reading or the reader themselves, the person having the reading, those in spirit, family members, loved ones, and therefore I'm sure it's extended to those in spirit that are higher beings, that are teachers around you, are coming in just waiting to really try and help you on an energetic front. They can't help you in a material way because you're obviously here in a material existence, and this is for you to experience all that comes with that. But certainly on an emotional level, and I believe that energy is primary and matter is secondary, and therefore they will try and influence the energy around us to try and balance it out so that if we're willing and we're wanting to, we can accept that healing at some level. I don't profess to understand how all that healing works. And I hate the word healing, actually, because it implies that we can heal someone else. It would be more accurate to say energy medicine. It's kind of their energy to us. And if we can utilize that energy, if our body's in a position and our mind and our state of being is in a position to utilize that energy, it will. So I know that to be the case. Yes, we don't all know our spirit guides. I mean, I have to say I kind of cringed for a long time as a teenager and in my early 20s, just even at the thought of saying I've got a Native American Indian, I kind of felt like, oh, why did I have to have a Native American? Everyone has a Native American. I kind of thought, now I don't know whether I can trust it. Everyone has a Native American in this line of work, or a nun. But they have taught me that it's because, like in all walks of life, I'm walking a spiritual pathway with working with spirit and the spiritual dimensions. Then I am going to have teachers come around me that are very good in that line of things. And obviously the Native American people were very spiritual and have a very deep understanding of how all that works. And therefore it goes hand in hand to have somebody who has that experience and knowledge to come and bring that to me. I'm pretty sure someone who works on cars probably has someone coming around them who's really knowledgeable in that way. And a surgeon probably has someone who is really. So yeah, they wouldn't necessarily be aware of it. But, my purpose here is to become aware of my guides and of spirit, and to bring that message in and try and provide evidence of survival with all that. Of course, guides don't provide evidence of survival, really. That's a difficult one, because it's only in giving messages from loved ones that that you can kind of tick that off evidentially, whereas if somebody just comes and says you've got a Native American or a warrior there with his bone through his nose, you're never going to actually know that unless you experience it for yourself, which is why I would never give that kind of thing in readings personally. There are some times when guides come close, and generally that tends to be when the person is already very spiritually aware and has had the evidence of survival already. But in everyday readings, it does tend to be those who are loved ones and family members who come and work with me to try and provide that evidence of survival.
Now, you have so much more to share than just on the topic of spirit guides, but I do have one more question about that. I've noticed that your newsletters have a lot of helpful information on things like how to connect with your spirit guides so people can have those experiences themselves. For a long time, I worked very hard to more consciously connect with my spirit guide, and I've had several books to help me, and I've taken a class with my mentor and friend, Merlin, and I was guided to meet what I believe, at the time at least, I believed was my spirit guide. And in the process, I spoke the name Merlin, which seemed to just come out of my mouth. But doubt starts creeping in, and I'm like, did I just make that up? Is my guide really named Merlin? But that's as far as I've ever really gotten with my guide. And I've tried to go through a lot of different processes to, develop a relationship, but it's been a long time since I've worked on doing meditation or anything deep like that. What advice can you give to people who are still trying to establish a connection, or maybe don't even know that they have a spirit guide?
Okay, so I think the first thing I always tell people is it's not actually necessary to know who your spirit guides are. For one, it's generally accepted that we have a guide or mentor or teacher that walks with us through life. I'm guessing that's White because he's been there the longest. But even myself and with my mediumship, because I am working with it and they are teaching me, and my mediumship is being developed by those in spirit who are teaching and bringing me forward. My guides, although teachers, mentors, they're changing all the time. So you could, and I don't mean every day, but as I go on in life and develop and grow and evolve myself, if I'm in need for a particular teaching or piece of information, then that guide, that influence will change. I will get somebody new in who's best suited to help me in that way. So the first thing to do is really just to relax about, don't try to badger them or think about it too hard or be insistent that you want to know that your guide is there, because it isn't actually, unless you're doing some work like I am, I guess, necessary. So normally what happens is once people start to relax, then what happens then is you're now allowing your subconscious mind to do the work instead of your analytical conscious mind constantly getting in the way through your want to meet them, if that makes sense. So those communications can then happen spontaneously when those guides are ready. It sounds like a cop-out, but we're not in control of that communication. They are. They know when they want to come forward. So then it's paying attention. You know, meditation doesn't have to be half an hour of visualization. A lot of the time, people find it difficult to meet spirit, loved ones, and guides because they're not making any space in their minds. They're not getting that stillness there for even 30 seconds to be able to have the knowledge placed in their minds. So with mediumship and with connecting with guides, it's all the same thing at the end of the day, just on different levels. It's about creating a space within you that is still, so your mind's not in the way. And that, I think, is the beginnings of it. It's 2 minutes of meditation, or it's bringing yourself to the present moment, or it's paying attention to a noise that's out there, or walking through the trees, where you can feel relaxed. Anything that you do that helps you switch your mind off and become just able to observe what's around you is the first step, really. After that, you can ask. You can sit and allow a guided visualization to be given if there's somebody that you can sit with, that you can trust, who could guide you, or you could follow a tape, or you could just ask. Visualize yourself in a place that makes you feel really comfortable, and then ask for your guides to come in. Now, they are notoriously difficult to see. I don't know why, but all my students and myself have experienced the same thing. You know, when I used to see Whitefeather initially, when I started developing, all I could see was his boots. I couldn't make my way up the body. I couldn't see his face. You know, I'm sure that a lot of that is my own proficiency. So it's not necessarily that the guides aren't presenting themselves. It's that we have to learn how to do this, how to get our mind into a state of stillness where we're able to observe and just pay attention without analysing, allow that to come. And it's little insights, and it's making records of those insights so that you don't forget them. And then the guides will, over time, build a relationship with you. They will give you little bits about themselves. It's not a fast process because they're also building that trust. They're wanting you to keep coming back so that they can strengthen their connection with you. It's not a fast process, and therefore a lot of people give up, which is a shame because it is it can be very rewarding, but I guess I haven't had to work at it that hard. They were the ones that were banging on my door. So I can understand that for those who find it really frustrating because they can't see anything, that they would then think, oh, I don't think there's anything in this. So it is about creating a space, spending some time with your own mind, learning to control your mind, not letting it control you. Sitting, finding a meditation practice maybe that is suitable for you, that you can work with, that you enjoy doing, that you can make in your life, that is practical. I have 2 young children. I can't sit for half an hour every day meditating. Sometimes it's just on the fly, it's just going into that space. And I don't generally now sit to connect with my guides. I do when I'm doing trance mediumship, that's a different thing, but actually just to get to know them and have a chit chat. I don't call upon them like that because I guess I assume they're very busy and they're not just with me all the time. Does that answer your question?
I think it does. I think for me, I think it's a problem of having that analytical mind that doesn't stop. And I also think it's having patience.
Patience.
When you can't, when it's not something that you can see or file away, if I don't feel like I'm progressing or I've accomplished anything, I tend to lose patience, and it's something I've wanted to get back to one of these days and get back to that and try to have that patience.
You're not alone. Everybody feels that impatience. Everybody does. And the other thing is, it's interesting what you just said there, because you said, if you can't see. Now, that's a mistake a lot of people make. Spirit communication is our total being. In fact, to be honest, a small percentage of my readings are what I see clairvoyantly, because the communication is coming through, I experience it in waves coming over my whole being. And a lot of that communication is being given in emotion or, in a feeling or a knowing. It is a subtlety. It's not, the amount of students that I teach that try to see, and then what they're doing is staring really hard. I can't see. Their eyes are shut. I can't see. You can see them straining. They're working too hard at it. They have forgotten to pay attention to a fleeting insight that's come into their mind, or a very loving feeling that may have come around them, or a peace, or, it's all those things when you're starting out and developing that sound very woolly almost, but that is how spirit communicate. And as you do it more and more and more and more, those sensations and knowings and insights and concepts become clearer and clearer and clearer until you really are starting to bring through evidence. Then you can put it to the test. I always Google what I get. I don't just accept it. So with Merlin, I would be looking up that name straight away after that experience and trying to find out what's the significance in Merlin. What is it that guide is trying to show me? To me, in my mind, I think alchemist understanding our universe. There's a lesson in there for you, even just in the name, and that's amazing. It's hard, isn't it, to actually think Merlin? It almost seems if you're anything like me, I'd be thinking, why would a Merlin want to come to me? Little old me.
Right.
And is there such a thing? But it's not that there's a wizard with a hat on called Merlin. It's the identity behind that name that's important. So I'd be looking up Merlin. That would be my starting point.
I'll keep you posted, I promise.
You're listening to the Big Séance Podcast with Patrick Keller. Look for us on iTunes and be sure to check out bigseance.com for more discussion.
International Podcast Day is September 30th, and you can help spread the word. International Podcast Day is dedicated to promoting podcasting worldwide. You may be asking, what can I do to get involved? It's pretty simple. First, head over to internationalpodcastday.com and check the suggestions. Second, use hashtag Podcast Day to join in the conversation. Remember September 30th. Now, let's start the conversation.
Before the rest of my interview with Claire Broad, I have some more great shout-outs and listener feedback to mention. This has picked up lately, and I want to sincerely thank those who have taken the time to reach out through email and those who have shared podcast episodes on Facebook, Twitter, and other social media. You know what I haven't received in a long time, though? Voice feedback. It's so easy with my SpeakPipe page, and you can talk to us from just about any device. Go to bigseance.com/feedback, and that will help you leave some voice feedback of your own. My buddy Karen has left us some great feedback in the past, and she rocks. You can share a story, ask a question, comment on a recent guest or podcast episode. Give it a try. It really adds to an episode. Be the first one to leave me some feedback to include in a future episode. You know you want to. Today, I want to publicly thank an individual who I don't think I've mentioned before. Mr. Jeffrey Fishbach is always supporting my work and has for quite a while, actually. And so I thank you, sir, for helping to get the word out to other paranerds. If you would like to learn how to promote and share all things Big Seance, then visit bigseance.com/share. I appreciate it. And as I mentioned in the intro today, TAC1313 wrote a very kind review in iTunes, which is very much appreciated. And apparently TAC1313 is another listener who tends to enjoy the podcast by candlelight. I love it. And with a cup of freshly brewed tea, too. Clint1978 left a review on our UK iTunes page. So shout out to my UK listeners, and I hope you're enjoying this part 2 of the Mediumship in the UK series. But listen to what Clint says. He says, "This amazing podcast keeps me company at night, driving my truck across England. Sometimes not a good idea when alone at some places at night." Well, be careful, Clint, because Halloween is not far off. And I plan on eventually kicking the spook factor up a notch. But seriously, thank you, Clint, and thank you, TAC1313, for your iTunes reviews.
Thanks for joining us for the Big Seance podcast. We'd better get back to the table while there's still some candlelight left.
As we jump back into my conversation with medium Claire Broad, listen as she paints a detailed picture of the development circle.
It's very normal, down to earth, very, if I said to you that for most part we are, sitting because we're really developing ourselves, I guess, first and foremost, like I was saying to you with the trying to get to know your guide, a lot of what is done in circles is a lot about developing oneself rather than having, amazing things going on within a circle. So they tend to be small groups of people coming together with like mind who are wanting to work with the experiences that they have had or no experiences in some cases. They just want to learn more about it. And with an experienced teacher, you can work with your strengths individually. When you get a really good energy going within the group, that's when you really start to see yourself progressing at a faster pace. So most development circles are a group of people coming together, sitting in circle, because this work is all about energy, and therefore the theory is that energy can flow around the group better, which should help people who are learning to try and work with that energy to be able to create a link with spirit or develop their psychic awareness, develop their intuition, grow spiritually within themselves, learn how to meditate. So most circles are kind of a mixture between spiritual growth and then actually learning the mechanics of mediumship, or being able to do a psychic reading and learning the differences in the two. So I think a good development circle when it comes to mediumship is a lot of practice, but also someone who's knowledgeable, who can give a lot of theory and really train those people in understanding what's happening, how this can possibly be a real phenomena, and getting hands-on with it, having experiences, trying it out like you have done, and building on that, being very patient. Circles tend to run for quite a number of years because it takes a while.
So a development circle really does require an experienced medium then?
There's two trains of thought. So I don't think it's a must. Put it this way, if you're living up in the hills somewhere and there aren't mediums at your disposal, I think if you are creating a space where you can, together with like-minded people who want to learn about spirit and provide an opportunity maybe to have the spirit world come close to them, as long as it's being done with the right intention and from the right place, with openness, truth, and wanting to have everybody in the group develop at their right pace without, it's that word ego again, but anytime you get ego in a group of people where someone wants to be leader and control it, and
right,
then it's never going to work. You're just not in alignment with what the spirit world is like, so you're just never going to actually meet or marry up with. The energy in the group's going to be all wrong. I would say, though, there comes a point, if you start to have some experiences, that you really do need to find a mentor or a teacher, because you will have so many questions. Mm-hmm. And also you can be learning in the wrong way. I mean, a lot of people will say to you, it's got to be protected. You need to have an experienced medium in there who can obviously watch what's going on and make sure that the mediums are working safely and that everything's fine. Well, that's true. But I think anytime a group of people come together with compassion and with the intention to learn, the spirit world are going to come close to you. When you want to be a medium and start working with it, then you really need to find a medium who is experienced, who can teach you, who can, give you the benefit of their experience and help develop you, pull out of you your strengths and really work you at it and point you in the right direction. Unfortunately, I don't know what it's like in America, but I would say in the UK, there aren't enough people getting a really high standard of teaching. And therefore, the mediumship can only go so far. We need to be raising the bar. I'm really passionate about that. That's why I teach a lot. I'm in the process of developing courses so that I can actually bring people through an actual pathway so that I know by the end of it, they've got a full grounding and not just, I've made a spirit link. Yay, I can go and work. That isn't it. It's great that if you can make a link and you can perceive spirit, but there's a whole lot more to it than that. So I wouldn't encourage people to sit in circle, get all excited and run out and start working and giving people readings and declaring themselves a professional medium. But if people do want to sit in circle and learn, then I would encourage that if they can't find anybody to start a circle. And actually, in our country, the Institute of Spiritualist Mediums are aware there's not enough circles in our country here, or put it this way, people don't know they're there, and there's people trying to learn. And so they actually have an online program that people can then learn in their own homes, use this program to form a circle and to do it safely. It gives circle exercises and ideas for what you can do on those evenings and to pull people along. And I think that's quite a good way to go, really.
That makes me want that program.
Well, it's the Institute of Spiritualist Mediums. You'll be able to do it in the States. You can join their organisation. It's hardly any money at all. It's just, it's all voluntary, the work that they do. And then their purpose is for exactly those reasons, for those, mediumship seems to go in the UK. It's in pockets. Where I live, there are a vast amount of spiritualist churches, experienced mediums and teachers, and we've got the Arthur Findlay College, which isn't too far away from me. And then we've got pockets around the country where there isn't much going on. And so therefore, something like the Institute of Spiritualist Mediums that's trying to raise the standards and teach people how to develop and do that online. I think that's quite admirable because we do want to try and get everybody working in a responsible manner.
Well, are you guys in kind of, that paranormal craze that I think we're experiencing here in the States, where there's a rush of more people interested in the paranormal, and maybe that's why you're seeing a lot of the inexperienced people trying to go out to be a medium and things like that?
I'd like to say that, but unfortunately, my jaded self, no, I've seen a lot of poor quality mediumship ever since I've been in this movement,
and
I have seen brilliance. So I think it's very much like you get plumbers who are brilliant at their jobs and plumbers that aren't so great, and singers that are fantastic and singers that aren't so great. Everybody's mostly coming from a good place, from with good intentions, but they may not necessarily have just had the exposure to a great teacher. They may not even realize they're not that great. Hey, it could be me for all I know. But
you sound pretty wise to me. You're covering it very nicely, if so.
Well, I think the proof is in the pudding. If you've got clients and you've got people asking you to work and they're putting their trust in you, and you're fighting them off, then you're probably doing a good job. If you're scratching around for readings and wanting to work and can't understand why no one's coming to you, maybe you need to just put a bit of extra time in.
Well, I'm gonna backtrack just a little bit. What kind of results, whether it be personal growth results in a development circle or evidence, do you get in your circles, and is any of it physical phenomena?
I have had physical phenomena. It isn't common. The reason it's not common is that most of the people that I teach have started out from the beginner level. So physical phenomena tends to happen when you've got mediums who are kind of a bit more advanced, therefore the energy around them has been more concentrated, or they've got more stamina, and then the physical stuff can start. What I have had a lot is mists forming within the room when the circle sits. We get a lot of temperature fluctuations. I actually started to keep a thermometer in the room so I could monitor it before we start and after.
Good.
We get, I also, in my trance circle, it's all recorded. It's all written down and recorded. I think sometimes people don't record enough what they're doing, so they can't actually monitor how far they've come. They can't see the progress. In the trance circle, we've had drumming, which is quite exciting. We have, it's quite common for lights to be going up and down. Now, the funny thing about that is it's not a power surge. There is a big difference. They go down very, very slowly to almost off, and then they come up again very slowly. It's much more deliberate. So we get a lot of that. Evidentially, with the mediumship side of things, I'm teaching what I hate the expression mental mediumship, but it's the mediumship where people are fully aware, and so their mind is involved, hence the point why it's called mental mediumship. So I'm teaching that in most of my circles. So the evidence comes through in the form of the information that they're giving to other circle members. So I'm very hot on evidence. I think when people come to see you for a reading, they really want to know that person that they loved is there with you. You've got to bring that person to life. It's not enough just to give out a woolly description of a grandfather or a grandparent. You've got to bring the personality alive. So I'll get my students trying to really bring that person into the room. So the evidence is very much who that person is, their personality, how they thought, what they suffered with, if anything. It can be anything from memories. Once the students become more proficient, it's obviously lovely to have names, but names are quite stumbling. They can be brilliant or they can completely throw a person off because you may pick up on a name that's connected with a person, but it isn't the name of the spirit communicator. And then everyone is just focused on that name and completely forgetting to take in all the other information that's being presented. So name is brilliant, but it's not enough on its own. You've got to have that personality. You've got to be able to talk about memories. You've got to be able to say something or give some evidence that has been given since the person died, so that proves they're still with you. You know, often you can think, I think somebody could be mind reading me if you only spoke about memories in the past, or, you know, things that person's been up to in the day that you're saying the spirit person's giving you. But when you actually give some information that is happened since the person died, so it's kind of proof they're still around, there's the evidence of survival, because they're now telling you something that's gone on since they died. And particularly if they can give you something that you're not even aware of, that you have to go away and research or find out about, to me that is the cherry on the top, not the names. To me, that is showing evidence of survival after physical death, because they're able to prove to you. So for me, when I'm teaching, that's what I'm trying to get out of my students. Many facets of evidence that they can talk about verbally, and then we also monitor the environment, how we're feeling, things that are going on physically, and we get all that. But again, it's patience. If the group constantly changes or people come and go, the energy in the group changes again, you're back to square one, so you're not likely to get all the physical stuff. But we try. I put trigger objects out. I've had bells hanging up asking for them to be rung. You name it, I've tried it. We've sung. I think if you sit in circle, you've got to be prepared to just feel silly, and you've all got to have a go and not worry about whether you're right or wrong at that moment in the circle, not so that disables you from being able to go forward. Be willing to make a mistake, because we've tried everything. We've clapped, we've sung, we've tried to raise energy that way. We've just experimented week on week with lots of different things to see what will work for that particular group. And of course, every medium in that group, and not everyone wants to be a working medium. A lot of the people in my circles just want to be able to develop that connection between themselves and their loved ones. Or build the proof themselves. They don't necessarily want to be working. It's all about trying different things week on week, because people are different. Their strengths are different. What they can, they might be absolutely hopeless at doing a reading per se, but put a pencil in front of them and they're doing absolutely brilliant drawing that someone can recognise as their father. So you've got to keep mixing it up and just dare to try different things and put the spirit world to the test. I really do ask a lot of them, but, I tend to think if they're really there, they can do some pretty amazing things, can't they?
Now, you've mentioned having clients from the scientific community. So
I do.
And you said your husband also is very scientific. Now, how many skeptics, or maybe I would say just those scientific community members, do you think you've reached or kind of convinced with this evidence-based mediumship that you talk about?
So I don't ever try and convince anyone. There's the first thing, because I can't prove it. I can't. If I could prove it, we could scientifically prove it. It's a subjective experience. So I don't think I'd turn them off straight away. I'm open. I can provide evidence of survival, and then I encourage them, those of scientific minds, to go and look at the science that's out there. I think mediumship should be dealt with like a science, not just a spiritual journey. It is that, but it is also a science. We can work with it. We can put it to the test. That is why I follow this pathway, because I'm not religious. I can't just go on something in faith. With this, I've been able to, in my own personal life, touch it, feel it, work with it, put it to the test. And so I wouldn't ever expect anyone coming to me for a reading not to do the same thing. So when those who are more analytical or more logical come, I do my best to provide the evidence of survival. It's not perfect, but if by the end of it I've been able to outstrip chance, if you put that piece of information with that piece of information with that piece of, and it starts to stack up against the odds, then I've given them something to think about. Then I am armed. So there is a lot of science out there. And I don't think with the paranormal you can just put something in one box and say, that proves it. I think you have to say, right, well, that experience, I experienced that. But if you now look into the science that's out there on near-death experience, if you look into deathbed visions, if you look into the countless numbers of people who have said they have seen a ghost or an apparition, if you put it with children that report about past lives and mediums and all the kit and caboodle that's out there, then I think if it was in a court of law, it would be beyond all reasonable doubt. And that's where I am with it. So with those people, I give them things to look at, research, and come around in their own way. They may decide at the end of the day, this is interesting, but I'm still not 100% sure. I will say most of my clients, for instance, I have 2 scientists sitting in my circle, which is great because they are able to keep me on track with, how to think about things and analyze things. And we do not lead ourselves, we don't get carried away with fanciful thoughts. Everything is looked at. I've also got a lawyer who sits in my circle, so pretty intelligent people who are able to weigh up the balance. And I've done a good enough job of convincing them that they've come and joined the group. I've also had a number of people. I had a lady whose husband was an eminent surgeon in the UK, and she was a dental nurse, so but very highly educated. And so she came and had a reading with me and really wanted to understand it and booked in with me again to then have an hour with me just to sit and talk to me and question me about the mechanics of it all, how it works, how do I think it works. I'm open to all that. So often people, when they are, I encourage that. I love that because it makes me think hard about what I'm doing and where's the evidence and what I need to do to provide it. To give people as much as I can peace of mind. This is for real. I am not away with the fairies with it. I'm very down to earth and grounded. And to me, this kind of work needs to be practical. It needs to fit in with everyday life. There's no point being, not having your feet touch the ground or be all lofty with my ideas. It needs to be, you need to be able to apply it to your life. So I have had a lot of scientific people. I live quite near a hospital. I've had a lot of nurses. I have a real mix of clients, and most of my clients, even if they're not scientists, are pretty hard on me. I've had a few people come without, they take their rings off. I've had a few people change their names and fess up at the end of the day that they've changed. I don't know what they're expecting from me. If I were that good, we'd have no doubt at all, would we? So they, but they change their names. That, people don't give me anything. And when I'm doing a reading, I will only let them say yes or no. I can't have any details because I can't have my mind coming into it. The tiniest piece of information, my brain suddenly has got something to chew over and it's off. So I only book readings via email, so I haven't even heard a voice. I haven't had a chance to even get to chat to somebody. And that is at my detriment. I'm letting strangers into my home. I have no clue who they are, even if they are who they are on email. It's crazy. But I really do think that at the end of the day, that is the evidence when people can come in and know I know nothing about them and tell them about their lives, tell them about their loved ones, give them memories and pieces of information and bring that person to life. Then, even the skeptical people tend to be very kind to me. And I have people that say they're not convinced, and that's fine. I am not here to convince anyone. I just wanted to do my best.
Well, I have to tell you, I love everything that you just said about the science and the evidence-based, and I would so love to be invited into a spirit circle, and I'm so sad that I'm not in England. Or development circle, I should say, not a spirit circle. But, oh my gosh, they sound so fun.
I've met some lovely people. I've made some really good friends over the years. They do tend to sit, people, once they join, they tend to stay because it's such a lovely environment. If nothing else, in our busy lives, having a moment to sit and meditate or switch off from all material things and just to focus on trying something new, it's in itself is enough. So they are really good fun. I've done it for the last 20 years. I can't imagine that I won't sit in circle. I sit for myself as well now because obviously teaching all the time, you don't necessarily, you're not bringing yourself along. I just think find someone that you respect, go and see them work, put their mediumship to the test, research. Don't just get carried away with your feet not touching the ground when you walk into a spiritual environment. You've got all these questions and you just get carried away. Look at who is working, how they're working, and then, try and find a way to tap into their knowledge and experience if they've got a space in your life. I've got the problem. I've got a waiting list of people trying to get into my circle at the moment because I generally don't think there is enough out there. The spiritualist churches in the UK are a great place to go and sit. They normally have circles. They have an open circle and a closed circle generally. And the open just means that you can come in off the street, you can put £2 in a donation box, you can sit and you can, with a teacher, develop your own connection with your own intuition and with spirit. And you don't have to commit to it. It's kind of more open. If you can't make it 1 week, it's not so difficult to the circle. But once you enter a closed circle, then you've got to commit to that because the energy's there. If you're not there, there's a person missing. There's one less person to work on. So they're a good introduction. I don't know if you have anything over in the US like that, but anywhere where there's a centre, a spiritual centre that's actually running circles that, doesn't cost anything to go and see if you enjoy it first. And then if you do, it's all about finding that teacher that you feel you can respect, you can learn from, let them take you under their wing and listen to them. My teacher says to me, I got on well because I listened. I think too many people maybe want to rush ahead or lose patience or feel they should be doing more when their teacher can see they still got a way to go. But, the frustration is it does take time. You're working a muscle at the end of the day and one that doesn't get worked from childhood. So we have to kind of learn to tap into this sense and develop it, and it takes time. It's like going to the gym. You wouldn't just suddenly go to the gym and expect to run a marathon. It's the same thing.
My last question today is a question that I've really been trying to incorporate into every interview lately, and it's probably the most important question of the interview. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Outside of the world of spiritualism and mediumship and development circles, what kinds of nerd are you? I'm very big into this. You have to have at least a couple of kinds of nerd.
Well,
those times when you're just over everything mediumship, and you've had a long day of doing nothing but reading people and development circles. What do you do?
Well,
besides raise kids.
Well, yeah, exactly. You know what? I'm completely big on nail art.
Okay.
I sit down and paint my nails and I do all kinds of art on them, and I've been obsessed with that, looking it up on YouTube and becoming an expert.
Cool.
It's the creative side of things, I think, really. So I enjoy making cakes and doing things like that where I can become in my creative side of me, just switch off and do something creative for me. But I just think there's not a lot much more exciting, is there, than the world of spirit. That might sound really dull, but at the moment I'm really into learning about ancient civilizations and how that all ties in. So I've been looking up all of that. And otherwise, I do really like riding roller coasters.
Well, that's cool. You're so passionate about it. Then there's not a lot of time for any of the other fluff.
Well, just not at the moment. I mean, there are lots of things I could do. I've got a bucket list as long as my arm. I absolutely love country music. I've got to get over to Memphis. I need to do that. Uh-huh. I'm big on music. I love films, all that kind of thing. So I'm pretty normal. I love True Blood. I've been addicted to that. It's all about, when I don't have to think. It's downtime. It's films. It's entertainment. Anything that I can do that is what I find entertaining, I guess. So creative as well. But it's not very exciting, is it? Right now, I've got 2 young children who take up my whole day when I'm not working. So I really do need to, once this phase of my life has gone by, branch out a little bit more, become a bit more nerdy.
Well, I hope you'll keep us posted when you do.
Thank you, Patrick.
So why don't do you have any upcoming events or anything you want to plug and promote? And you can give us your website or any contact information.
Sure. So, I'll start there. My website is www.clarebroad.com. I have a few things that I'm working on outside of my actual private practice. There will be some public demonstrations coming up. I know that another medium, a close friend of mine, her and I are going to book a theatre again and get back into the theatres. I shy away from that. I don't think that I naturally embrace being in the media side of things with my mediumship, but it kind of is taking me there. The main thing that I'm really focusing on outside of actually doing this work at the moment is developing a course with a college that I work with called Lucis College. And that's all in the development stage at the moment because we're trying to get that course accredited. So hopefully by the beginning of next year, I'll be in a position where I'll be actually hopefully able to run a course on mediumship that takes people from the beginning to the end, and they can come out with some qualification in it. It won't be necessarily, through an educational body, but it will be a diplomaship. And we are trying to get it accredited in this country. So that is really exciting. But of course, That's not quite done yet. So that's taking up all my energy. Plus the spirit world keep telling me I have to write. So there's a whole load of things going on. I actually haven't got the time yet to fit it all in. So the training, the work, the demonstrations, just look on my website because it's all being updated and posted regularly, where I am, where I shall be, and what's going on. And join up to my newsletters because that's when I update everyone on all that kind of thing. My circles, the training, the demos, and my private practice and how busy I am.
And for listeners here in the States, you do readings over the phone too, right?
I do. I do them via Skype. Okay. And I've done them to Argentina. I've done them to Australia. The technology is amazing, isn't it, in this world?
It is. Well, you have this amazing energy that radiates from you even before I heard your voice, just, reading your emails and your communication. And I want to thank you for sharing with us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on, Patrick. I'm really enjoying your podcast. I am a fan.
Oh, you rock. Thank you for that.
For show notes, including links to anything we may have mentioned in this episode, visit bigseance.com, now the home of both the blog and the podcast. Just click on the Big Seance Podcast logo or find it in the menu. You can also find and subscribe to the show on iTunes and Stitcher. Do you have any comments or feedback? Please contact me at patrick@bigseance.com. You can call my feedback line at 770
775-TELL-ME. That's 775-583-5563. You can also record audio feedback right from the site using the SpeakPipe link included in the show notes. I could decide to include your voice in a future show. Thank you so much for listening and reading. Unfortunately, it's time to blow the candles out, but we'll see you and light them again next time.